Hello again, crafty friends. I wanted to talk to you about one of the sample cards that I made for the Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous June 2021 release. And for this one, I used the new stencil THS155. I don't know the name of it, but it has all of these great dots on it. And so I used this stencil. I used the Mod Cactus, and I used the new bold sayings. So those were the Stampers Anonymous items I used. As far as distress, I used the Distress Embossing Ink Refiller. I used the new mini domed ink blending foams. If you don't have these, you can use, a regular one, or you could use one of the blending brushes. Any of those would work fine. I used Distress Oxide sprays in Squeezed Lemonade, Kitsch Flamingo, and Twisted Citron, because I kind of wanted this one to be just bright and fun. And lastly, I used the Distress Archival ink in Ground Espresso for this one as well. And for the paper, I used Distress White Heavystock and a piece of just regular vellum for the sentiment. You will also need, and I don't have it here because I have them in little Tupperwares like this, but you will need some clear superfine embossing powder and white embossing powder. All right, let's get started. I used a lot of the Distress White Heavystock for some reason this time, and I'm not sure why, I just did. So for this card, it is a regular 5.5 by 4 1/4, and since these come in 8.5 by 11, you can get 4 pieces out of one. So let's go ahead and cut this at 5.5 by 4 1/4, and these are really easy to see on here because they are the dotted lines, so it's easy to remember which ones you are cutting. Okay, so we have our 4 pieces. Now we're going to get started with coloring these, and it's really simple. So let me get my splat box. All right, I have 1 piece on here. These are all going to turn out the same or different, no matter if you use the same colors I do or not, because they turn out different every time I do it. But I really wanted just to get a little bit of color on there, and so I just sprayed my Distress Oxides. And sometimes you get that little circle from the center, and it's okay. All right, we're gonna do a little green, and I want some Kitsch Flamingo in there. So that's going to kind of mix a little bit with a few of these and maybe make a little bit of an orange, and that's great. So I'm just gonna set that there, and here's a piece over here that I actually just dripped on, and that's fine, no big deal. I'm going to spray a little bit. A little bit of Kitsch Flamingo in there, and some of the green. I opened this a little bit. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So you can see I'm just kind of letting it do its thing. And that's really all I did for the background with this, because we're going to go over it, and I just wanted to get some color. I didn't really want to do the oxidize thing where I add water. I just want some color on the background. That's all I'm going for, okay? And then once you get it done, there's one of my cat hairs. Once you get it done, you can kind of look and decide which one you feel like you like better. I might get a little bit of this darker pink off of there. My goal when I did this was to keep it fairly light. I'm feeling like I like this one better at this point, but you never know. All right, so that's all it is to getting color on your background. You want to let these dry, and then we're going to add the clear embossing, and that's what's going to give us some pattern. So let me get these dry and we'll get started on embossing. We have our backgrounds done. We're going to get ready to stencil, and before we do, I want to make sure that these will stick to my craft mat. So I'm using a little piece of the Sizzix sticky grid sheets, and these are double-sided sticky pieces, so it's sticky on both sides when you peel this paper off. And then I put it onto my mat, and I put my I'm going to go this way. Put my piece down because my card's going to go this way. And then what I did was I just kind of put this on here so that the circles were off just a little bit on the side. And I hold that down. I am going to use my domed foam on a blending tool, and I'm going to use some of this Distress Embossing ink, and all I'm going to do is squirt it on my nonstick craft mat and pick some of it up, work it in. Okay, and then I'm going to hold this and I'm just going to go back and forth and work that in so that now you can see how it's darker where I've gotten some of that embossing ink in there. And I'm pushing it down to try and get it in all the little details. And I hope I got it in all those little ones too. Then I'm going to pick this up, and there you can see the pattern. So I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to line up the pattern. Get a little more. I probably have enough on there, but I just want to make sure. And I'm going to hold that down and finish off the piece. Now the embossing ink will stay wet a little bit longer than, say, Distress ink or Archival ink for embossing. So we're okay here. I'm going to lift that up and make sure I got it. Yep, and it lined up perfectly. Now I'm going to pick this up, and I'm going to bring my clear embossing powder over, and I'm going to sprinkle it on there. And you can see how it's gone right onto that embossing ink. Now, if you want, and if you are afraid that it will stick to the background, you can go over it with one of those static things. But there you can see, hopefully, you can see the embossing powder all over there. Whoops, I missed a couple of little spots there. Okay. And now I'm going to heat this, and it should have a nice shiny background that will show this pattern. Hopefully you can see how shiny that is. And really, you can't see any of the maybe imperfections or things that may have bothered you on the background when we just quickly sprayed some Oxide on it. But it has a really fun, shiny pattern to it. And that's what I was going for. Now, I want to try something different on this next background. And so let me get this sticky part off and see how it works. I want to try, I heated that, so I don't know if it's going to stick now. Okay, I want to try doing what I saw Paula Cheney do, and that was that she did kind of a grid like this. So let's try that and see what that looks like. I think that'll be really fun. Okay, so the same thing, we're going to hold it. We're going to load this up. We are going to get our embossing ink down in all of the little crevices. Okay, lift it up. And yep, we can see it. Let's see if I can get this to line up right. It's a little bit different with the shadows this way. Okay, I hope that's right. All right, we'll give that a try. It's really fun, I think, with so many different makers and styles that we each get to learn from them, including other makers. I'm always learning so much from the makers. and it really enhances my creativity, and I'm sure it does yours too. They're just so incredibly talented. Okay, I hope that's lined up. I'm doing this kind of quickly. All right, close enough. Let's see how that looks. That's kind of fun. Look at that, just a different pattern, putting it on the diagonal as opposed to the way it looked before. I had a little something on the back of my stencil there. Okay, let's see. All right, and you can see we've got our embossing ink on there. I'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and heat this and show you what it looks like. Look at this. How fun is that to have it on the diagonal? So there's our two different backgrounds, and you could again choose which one you think fits the card that you want, and then we're going to finish it up. So the next thing is that we want to stamp the sentiment from the new bold sayings. And as I said before, we're going to stamp it on just a small piece of vellum that's going to go across the center here. And I used Focus on the Good because it fit on that little piece of vellum. So that's what we're going to stamp, and we're going to emboss it in white next. So you don't need to watch me do that. You know how to do it. I'm going to just stamp this in the middle of the vellum with embossing ink, and then put my white embossing powder and heat emboss it, and we'll be ready to go. So when we come back, I'll have that done, and then we'll talk about the mod cactus. Okay? To stamp our mod cactus, since I used Distress Oxide sprays on the backgrounds, I went ahead and used Distress Oxide for my stamping for the cactus. And I kind of mixed a little bit of some of the greens, so I used a little bit of Rustic Wilderness, some peeled paint. You could throw in a little Twisted Citron since we have that in the background, or a little Shabby Shutters. Any of those will work okay. For the little bit of color that you're going to have on the pots that they'll be in, I used Rusty Hinge because that's a great color for the terracotta pots, but I also add a little Cracklin Campfire in there too. And then later on, you might want to add some flowers, and for the flowers to pull in the color there, I use the Kitsch Flamingo and the Cracklin Campfire. Or you could pull in maybe more of the pink if you wanted to go with, say, maybe Worn Lipstick or Festive Berries. You could pull the color in with those as well on the flowers. So this is really how I did it. I stamped this first. I think you can actually stamp this second sometimes, but for me it worked easier to stamp this first. So what I did was I would take, and let's do a green. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a bright green on some of them, and so I'm just going to put a little bright green here and there. And then I want to make sure that I don't get any on the pots. And so I went through with my Inky Binky and carefully wiped off any that was on the pots. And then stamp with purpose. And I've got a little bit of green there, but I'm not done. So then I might add in a little bit of some Shabby Shutters in some of the spots where maybe I didn't get my ink. Okay, so now we're going to stamp again with purpose. All right, we have more of a cactus, and then maybe I'll go in with a little bit of peeled paint on a few more spots. Kind of trying to get down there at the bottom. All right. And maybe I'm doing this backwards. Maybe some of you would start with the Rustic Wilderness. It's all fine, however you want to do it. And I don't want it too dark, so I'm just gonna pop in a little bit of that. And then if you feel like you got a little too much, you can go in and even get a little of it off. I have some on the pots right there, which green on the pots isn't really too bad. It gives them a little bit of a mossy look. So let's see how we did. Okay, now I feel like I want a little bit more coverage, and since these are oxides, I can go back in and add more coverage, and some of that's going to go ahead and show through. Okay, there we go. All right, so we have our, now you can see I have a little bit of green that did show through. I'm not really worried about that. All right, I'm going to go in with my hickory or rusty hinge, and I have some, I got a whole bunch on my cactus right there, so I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off. And because these are kind of off center anyway from the outsides, it's really okay if they don't line up perfectly, because the stamp that goes over it will cover any of that up. Now maybe I want to add just a little bit toward the bottom, maybe of some of that Cracklin Campfire, and I'm going to go in and just tap it so it's not quite so, it doesn't have quite the lines there. See, it blended just a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I like it. So I'm going to spray these, and then let's put the outlines on them. I need to get this dry so that my other stamps will adhere, and this is how we're going to do that. I'm going to take, whoops, I didn't use that one. I used this one. Okay. So you're going to do your best to kind of line it up on there. That's this one. And, whoops. Right. I'm going to go ahead and move this over. And here we go. I'm going to stamp with ground espresso, Archival ink. And let's hope for the best, all right? And remember, these are not made to completely line up, so it's all right if they don't. And see how they're off register just a little bit, and that's okay. That's why they're mod cactus. I'm going to do just a little more. And then we're going to add some flowers. I think there's several ways you can do these flowers, and I think that this can be a center for like this one and some things like that. So I'm going to put that one there, set this one aside, and I'm going to do some Kitsch Flamingo on that one. And it's not too difficult to just ink up the one, and then sometimes you get just a little bit on the other one. That's okay. Just wipe it off. Okay. And actually, it won't make any difference because we're going to cut around these anyway. So there I have some Kitsch Flamingo on that little one. And like I said, if you want, you could go in and put a center in it. So let's see if I can get the center in that one. I didn't do this on most of mine, but it's maybe a fun little detail. So there's some Cracklin Campfire in the center of it. And actually I got some of the edge on there, but that's okay. So you're going to put flowers, and let me wipe this one off. You're going to put flowers on them if you would like. And I kind of like this one on here. So I'm going to put this right there. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to do some Cracklin Campfire on that one. Okay. And then I probably want a couple of those coming out of that one, not just one. So I'm going to put it over here. And this one you want to be sure you don't get any on this other flower because it's right in the middle of the cactus. All right, so there we go. Now I'm going to be cutting out around these, so I don't really care about any of the rest of that. And then I have this really cute little flower here that I'm going to put here. And maybe I will do the festive berries on that one. And a little festive berries up here. I should have wiped that off, but I'm kind of in a hurry. Okay. Now you're going to dry those, and then we're going to fussy cut around them before we put them on our card. All right, as we finish this up, I fussy cut the cactus out. And again, you do not have to be perfect when cutting these out. I left white around it, and I just did it very quickly. Oftentimes I have used the little small snips by Tim Holtz for this, but as most of you know, there is a serrated edge on one side, and so sometimes that can leave kind of a serrated edge look to it, which some people don't like. I can't find my small fabric scissors from Tim Holtz, the haberdashery scissors, but they do come in 2 sizes. I was using this for a project that I cannot get to right now, so I can't show those to you. But these do not have a serrated edge, either one of them, and they are incredibly sharp, including the tips. You want to be very careful with them, but these do make for very easy fussy cutting. They're amazing, and they don't hurt because just like the regular scissors from Tonic, they have that kind of cushiony grip, and they're beautiful for fussy cutting. So if you have these in the larger sizes, a little bit more, you know, difficult to work with, but it's still workable. But if you have the small size, this is a great size for doing all of your fussy cutting, and I highly recommend them. Anyway, so you want to get them cut out. You want to put them, and what I did was I just sewed the vellum on across the middle of the card. I put my cactus on and put it on a card base, and you're good to go. That's all there is to this Focus on the Good stenciled background card that I made. Hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me through the link on my blog. Thanks a lot for stopping by.